Well, it is the year of well, actually it's the year of robotaxi, but I've been noticing kind of this
It's
sub
nearly the month of Robotaxi.
month of robotaxi.
And then a few months later, it'll be the month of
There you
Optimus.
go. That's right. In fact, I want to come back to it later, but there's breaking news. I guess this is kind of breaking news, especially since you'd seen it and I hadn't. What's going on with that? So there was a note up earlier today that Tesla was making 12 robotaxis a week or a month.
Well, Optimus,
I'm sorry, Optimus.
a
But
day.
Jerry, why don't you take over? It's your find. Take us through what you just learned.
Well, actually, I am not a lot more clued in than you are, but here's what we learned for what it's worth. Firstly, what has to be said, excuse me while I get positioned here. So what we learned is what Sawyer Merritt posted for us, which is very, very good. And what he told us is that Travis Axelrod, the IR head, had a session with Wall Street analysts today, and that on Optimus, he said they're going to offer investor tours of low-scale manufacturing by Q4.
I wonder what
They're
an
still on
investor, I
track
wonder
to
what an
launch a
investor,
robotaxi.
I wonder what an investor means, Larry. Does it mean somebody with 5 shares or 100 shares? But interesting.
No, typically these are institutional
I
investors,
see.
but
Big.
in the past, Tesla's has made invites to retail shareholders on a sort of a raffle basis, on a
Right, right.
picking a name out of a hat. But so the investor tours of low scale manufacturing by Q4. They're on track to launch their robotaxi service in Austin. The initial fleet will be 10 to 20 cars, will be invite only at first. So it's
Okay,
going to be a very measured rollout.
that's interesting. Okay,
And
invite.
yeah, they can currently make 12 Optimus robots at a time in the second floor. There's a modification to that, which I'll show you in a moment. So don't take that as gospel
Okay.
yet. Production capacity is currently 1,000 a month. So I think what the variation is, they have been making 12 Optimus robots at a time, but they're in the midst of introducing or initiating their production capacity, their low volume production capacity of 1,000 a month, and that will be operational shortly. A second gen line is targeting 10K per month. That's at the end of this year or early next year. The third gen line, which may be at the end of next year, is 10x the second gen line.
Right.
Tesla wants to build thousands of Optimus robots by the end of this year. And I think they'll make it because
Yeah. Yeah.
it looks to me like they're getting themselves into gear. Yeah. I don't know if you saw me, but it was posted. I was on Herbert the other day and I offered Tesla $250,000 for an Optimus.
You did.
That was my opening bid.
That's your opening
Yeah.
bid. Good deal.
Yeah. And then he noted that Tesla Dojo D2 second version comes out in 2026. It'll be more efficient than Dojo 1 and cheaper than the comparable NVIDIA solution. It's not going to be one-for-one competitor with NVIDIA, but Dojo 3, expected in 2028, thinks it can narrow the performance gap for application-specific integrated circuits.
Hmm.
Tesla believes that 10xing their compute and acquiring much cheaper chips could result in a major unlock. He didn't say unlock in what, but
Right.
clearly, this is, in this vast sort of robotaxi, robotic world. I mean, Tesla is rapidly turning into, a computer-driven robotic world, whether that robots on 4 wheels, 2 feet, or some undetermined future product.
Yeah.
So that was what they said, and then he did make this correction that Tesla is not currently building 12 Optimus robots at a time. they've historically been able to build about a dozen or so robots at a time in the first line in engineering labs. So that's not, that's where they are right now. So that was the announcement today.
That is pretty amazing. So
Yeah.
the line will be capable of thousands, and then next year will be capable of tens of thousands per month, 10,000 per month, and then 100,000 a month sometime after that, maybe the beginning of 27.
Ish.
Ish. Yes, exactly. Very, very interesting. So then, yeah, so then the application or where they're going to put them, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully,
Very good French wine.
very good French wine.
Bordeaux.
Does it?
Really fine Bordeaux.
So
Yeah.
do you need the wine, Larry, to relax? Because I know you're very nervous in these X broadcasts.
No, no, for years and years and years, I've had a glass of French wine. Of not French wine, of wine. And
Wine.
I drink the
Yeah,
red Bordeaux. It's my favorite, one of my favorites. And I drink that in the evening, every night at 5 o'clock.
I see at 5 o'clock. And you should use some California wines, Larry, or you're going to get a call from the president.
I have some favorite California wines. Yeah, I love, and we used to go to the wine country every year, Sonoma,
Okay.
every year,
Yep.
and tour the wineries and buy the wines, and so I love California wines,
And
but
then you're supposed to have some, I haven't ever visited any, you're supposed to have some amazing wine country right at your back door, practically.
yeah, well, I grew up with that, and I
Oh,
grew up drinking South African wines. Um, today they're not necessarily my favorite, although I do have a few that I really enjoy.
well, I was talking about the Carolinas.
Oh, Carolina, no, there are very few drinkable wines in
Oh, is that
Carolina.
right? Okay. I guess
Very
there's
few.
a lot of wineries, just not a lot of drinkable wines. I see. Okay.
No, no.
All right. Well, okay. Back to business then. So we have uh very good news about Optimus, I would say, with regard to that
Yes.
listing of plans and execution, which is not a lot different than we thought, except that it sounds as if the 1,000 per month line is ready to go and or maybe beginning to produce already. It kind of ties into where I wanted to go today, Larry, and that is in your and my my wife likes to call it the back nine of life. We are living in a very, 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 very exciting period of time. And it seems to just get more exciting by the day. I was obviously, I'm sure you were too impressed by what the president has been able to do the last 3 or 4 days in the Mid East. I reported this morning that some folks are saying that if Iran is brought uh, into the Mid East as a trading partner with the rest and kind of settles down and decides to join the world, that the Mid East will be a larger trading zone than Europe, making it the third largest trading zone after China, United States and China instead of Europe. Not, I said this morning I wasn't necessarily happy about that. I'm not.
Yeah, I think the Middle East is hobbled by this fever dream of Islamic conquest.
Right.
And I find it hard to understand why in the first half of this new century they should be afflicted by this fever dream. I would have thought that we would have seen arising a sort of a modern emerge a modern version of Islam, but it's not.
Yeah.
And so I have far less optimism
Right.
on the subject
Yeah.
than you have read about.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm optimistic that a for that part of the world to be successful in terms of financially and entering into the world economy, the more that they do that, maybe is more likely to produce peace. But long term, it may be a big negative. You and I may not be around to see that negative, but long term, it seems to me it's not a great thing. And it's sad that Europe is, in such a decline that they're giving up kind of their position as the third most important trading zone.
We'll see what happens. I don't know if you noticed today, the Conservative Party advertised that they are against illegal immigration in England. They want to deport 1 million illegal immigrants. That, I mean, that's the Conservative Party, I should say.
Right.
And Labour appears to be following that route now. They all got trounced dramatically by this new party that never existed, 6 months ago, and largely because of immigration. We see the German government changing dramatically their attitude towards immigrants. I have no doubt the rest of Europe will follow. I think this, when we talk about the fever dream, I mean, the fever dream has had different fevers in different continents. And so we've had this fever dream of, this Muslim extremism that reached its height in the times of ISIS. And what's interesting is this new leader of Syria, who was, Al-Qaeda and then an ISIS figure, seems to have turned 180 degrees. Who knows?
Right.
He's talking about joining the Abraham Accords.
Yeah, I know.
But, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, Saudi Arabia was an extreme country. All the, the 9/11 criminals came from Saudi, or most of them came from Saudi. So there is, there's the opportunity for change. There's the possibility of change. Who knows? I mean, maybe this dream breaks.
Right.
And is the Islamic world, which is, an ancient world and which has incredible history, will awake, and there will be, a reform or a renaissance. Who knows? I mean, it's possible. It could happen. I mean, if you walk in the streets of Malmo, or you walk in the streets of, even the biggest cities in Sweden, you couldn't imagine that these things, even London, you couldn't imagine that this dream will break and people will throw off their burqas and, become modern. As modern as they are inside their homes, they still keep this face. And I know this is political, and a lot of people won't want me to be speaking this way, but it's time, it's time. And maybe this president will actually help us make that happen. But when you get to Iran, you're talking about a country that has immersed itself in the stream. At least its leaders have immersed themselves in the stream.
Yes, not necessarily.
And the whole population is not living within the stream.
Right.
So you have this very, very artificial situation where you have this government and you have this clergy class running this government, and then you have people living a completely different life privately, but publicly appearing to comply. And then you have this incredibly revolutionary group of militants that are aligned with this religious group. I don't see how they make this change. But, if you saw Saudi from 20 years ago and you see Saudi now, it's possible. It could happen.
So many possibilities. So if we take what the president has done in just a few days, we look at the amazing amount of money that's been committed to the United States. And this is on top of the commitments that we've already received from others in terms of the infrastructure. We see the market moving back now within 3% of all-time highs. The S&P is within 3% now of 6147 or whatever exactly is.
And
Um,
our balance of payments have begun to reverse.
right. The balance of payments beginning to reverse. We've got the fear greed index now almost going back to full greed. We have the VIX down to 17. We have gold falling and the dollar gaining for 4 weeks in a row. The dollar gaining, not gold falling, but the dollar gaining for 4 weeks in a row. And the presidential poll numbers are not only up on Rasmussen, but they're up on the other polling, the I would call the mainstream media polling sites as well, and the right track at the highest level ever in history, in terms of how the population is seeing the world, at almost 50% right track. So, Larry, it feels different. It feels like an incredible explosion of opportunity. The golden.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna give you a number.
Okay.
I just looked at it quickly. My portfolio, my stock portfolio,
Right.
is up 58% in a month.
In a month. In a month. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Just pure, just the pure stock component of it.
Yeah. Yeah. We have Tesla up over 50% now from its low, from the 220, 223, whatever it was, up to three, banging on the door on 350 today. And actually going over a couple of times, but not ending at 349.98. So,
Yeah, I mean it's extraordinary. If you look at the sentiment on President Trump, I mean, it went to the extreme high on the night of the inauguration,
Mhm.
down to, pretty low at the April 2nd or April 3rd, I guess. And now it's almost back to the peak again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, in a way, Tesla has followed that. I mean, we're not back to where we were at the time of the inauguration, but pretty damn close.
And Larry, we're only 2 weeks away from being back there.
That's true. And the other issue that we should say, yeah, you may be right, but you may be wrong too. But but the other thing we should say is that we haven't really seen the long-term outcomes of so many of these policies that he's put in place.
Right.
But it feels like his first term, it feels like his first term. Who knows? But the amazing thing is the Democrats haven't stopped. They have this 86 thing going now. This is kind of like they're looking for their Russia. They're looking for their Russiagate. They're trying to find a Russiagate.
Yeah.
There's got to be a donkey. There's got to be a pony. Sorry, pony and all this shit. I mean, guys, come on. Let's get it together. Let's get it right.
Well, as you and I have been talking about for, I think, 18 months, bonds became the bellwether. The Fed, as important as the Fed is, really the 10-year bond has been the bellwether practically the whole time that you and I have been doing this Mondays and Friday night show. And today they're really the outlier. Everything else has kind of fallen into place, but the bonds are still sitting there. And then you gave me, just before we came on the air, you were reading a headline from CNBC, which said,
the one of the rating agencies have downrated the United States of America.
yeah, now this has happened before, in Biden's term, I think.
Yeah.
And but they're down.
Moody's have just downgraded U.S. credit rating on increase in government debt.
Yeah. So while I maybe wouldn't argue with them, although I think it's really ridiculous in a way, as as I think it was the president said a few weeks ago, if you're looking, and other people said it after or before him, if you look at the wealth of the United States, the underground wealth, the real estate wealth, all of the things that the United States owns, and you look at that as
Well, I have a podcast coming out on that subject.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, I looked at the All In podcast session on Doug Burgum.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you listened to
Oh,
that
absolutely.
interview.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've reported
And
it.
I did an analysis of that. And the point that I make is that there is Doug Burgum's point, of course, not my point. Doug Burgum's point is that the United States has this gigantic balance sheet,
Right.
and that we haven't allowed ourselves to actually put this balance sheet to work.
Right.
And that if we do, we could turn this thing around so dramatically. And, we talk about all the possibilities. And, I have a personal story of my own on Doug Burgum.
Oh,
And that will drop next week. And
okay.
so watch that. But I discussed this very thing. We have this gigantic balance sheet. Trump recognizes this. I
Yeah.
mean, people say terrible things about Trump, but he has a really strong sense of business and how to execute. And he has a real strong sense of this. And I think if anybody can do it, Doug Burgum can. He has the chops to do it.
Definitely.
And the thing about it is people don't realize it. So yeah, we have a downgrade now, but in the downgrade, Moody recognizes that we've kind of turned the corner, that
They do. They say that. Okay.
yeah, that the tariffs are already beginning to bite. We're seeing income from tariffs, but the tariffs are not the big deal. What is the big deal is these gigantic resources that we, the United States, own and can put to, really good use in terms of both the ecology of the earth and also the value to the United States citizenry.
Yes, and Trump seemed to back away for the minute on the sovereign wealth concept, but I don't think
I
he'll.
don't think so.
He said what he said was is that we do want to start really building the sovereign wealth fund, but he felt we need to pay down the debt first. Now he could change his mind next week, or he.
Right, but you got to understand that he's not going to take cash and put that into a wealth fund.
Oh, no.
That's a whole different
Right.
matter.
Right.
But he's right. I mean, we have to see, instead of the debt rising, we have to see the debt leveling out and or falling
Right.
before we start thinking of building, massive assets.
Mhm.
But remember, putting these assets to work is not it's not going to happen next month. It's going to be a 5 to 10 year process. But recognizing the asset and putting the process into place, that's the important thing.
So if we take what you and I have just discussed, okay, we look at the bold promises from the Trump administration in its first 120 days or whatever it's been,
Yeah.
and then we add to it. And I was just, today I was just thinking about the market cannot be, it cannot be even close to taking into consideration what's going to happen in the next 18 months. In the next 18 months, we're going to
Yeah,
have.
but there's enormous risk around those things.
Okay, but let me just lay them out, okay, first, and then let's talk about. So we got the robo taxis in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it's going to be. We've got the
Wait
human
a minute, you're talking about Tesla's
overall.
overall. Well, robotaxi is not
Overall,
going to change the
dramatic.
direction of the economy.
The robo taxis, long term or even medium term, are going to change the direction of the economy. They're going to have a massive impact on the economy. It's going to reduce the cost of transportation, which is one of the highest costs that people have, that consumers have, that the truck.
Not going to happen in 18 months, my friend.
No, but it'll be
very good.
Right. Okay, let me restate it.
Okay.
We're in the middle of this transition.
Yeah.
The beginning, some of it's the middle, some of it's the beginning, but there's four major transitions: robotaxis, humanoid robots, AI, and energy. Those are the four. The energy thing, we're talking about doubling the amount of energy in the produced in the United States. AI.
Well, if Elon has his
Oh, yes.
terawatt plan, then you're tripling it.
Right. One for Elon and one for the rest of the United States. Yes. Agreed. Okay, so you've got those four, which are all transformative. Absolutely transformative. I mean, again, if you believe Kathy, if you believe
Yeah.
Tony Seba, or if you believe yourself or me, because we've been talking about it for
Right.
2 years. So those four things are in the process, and the ultimate thing, according to Kathy and Elon and Tony, and I think you and me, is that it's going to be massive wealth improvement. Kathy talks about 10% a year, 9% a year, not in 2030, but in 2027.
No, I think the timing is off. I cannot see a revolution of that moment occurring in under 5 to 10 years, closer to 10 years than 5 years, in my judgment.
To get to a 10% per year productivity increases.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we haven't seen 10% productivity increases in 80 years, even 100 years. And before that, these revolutions are very slow at first before they become very fast. Anyway, look, the real point is not that it happens in 18 months, and you may believe it does, and we can take a friendly bet on that, but the main point is direction.
Yes.
What matters here, Randy, is not the end goal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the end point. It's not the 5 year, the 3 year, or 18 months, or the 10 years. It is perception of the market that we are in that direction.
Right.
So when Moody's downgrades us and then says there are glimmers of light at the end of the tunnel, or that there are, quote, green shoots. Remember green shoots?
Yep.
Green shoots is what we need to see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That will change the direction of the market. That's more important than these revolutions happening overnight, which they don't.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not that far apart.
Right.
Maybe we're a decade or two apart in terms of timing, but in terms of the possibilities, I think they're there. And you're looking for the end goal. I'm talking about the green shoots.
Yeah. Okay. So, and that, I think maybe I'm not even looking for the end goal. I'm kind of looking for, when does the market catch up, or will it ever catch up to the realities in terms of what this could mean? Again, Larry, maybe you don't think that we'll be looking at 10% per year productivity increases, but we saw some significant productivity increases in the 90s. And this looks to me to be way bigger than the 90s in terms of just AI. People are saying that it's bigger, that just AI is bigger than the internet revolution.
But were you around in 2008 when the dot-com bubble burst?
2000, you mean?
2000, sorry, I'm going to get to 2008 in a minute. 2000.
Oh, was I around? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Were you underground? I mean, no. The point is, everybody thought it was going to happen overnight, and tomorrow the internet would be built.
Right.
And then the market deflated because of the realization that it wasn't going to happen overnight. But it happened. It only took 20 years to happen.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right? That's my point.
No.
And in 2008, we saw the collapse of the market.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there was too much money pumped in. It wasn't that technology had advanced that much. But think about how long it took to recover.
Mm-hmm.
How much we talked in 2010 about green shoots, 11 into 12 to 13 to 14. And only by 14 or 15 did we see the market really begin to take off.
But we were under a different kind of president with a different kind of vision, who was perfectly happy to see the economy bump up, 1% per year for 10 straight years. We have a president now that is fully intending, and seems to have the chops to pull it off, is to bring in massive investment now, immediately. And you've got these other guys, all the guys that are putting together these data centers. The data centers have to be built. The data centers have to be powered up. The data centers have to have chips in them. The data centers have to have scientists and engineers to manage them. And the money is coming in to do it.
Yeah, but in a multi-trillion-dollar world, those $1 billion or even $1 trillion investment over 15 years, they just become part of the everyday business. I think we get a little bit too carried away about these individual investments. It's not individual investments that count. It's the market as a whole making those moves. So, we saw the same thing with this ridiculous plan of Obama to spur the economy, and he talked about, shovel-ready
Right.
infrastructure projects and all that bullshit. It doesn't work that way. One project, 10 projects do not an economy make. It takes all the players, all the actors in the economy to be moving, lockstep towards some sort of gigantic end goal. It doesn't take, well, Saudi's going to invest 500 million, that guy's going to invest 500, though. We saw that in 2016 with Trump. He trumpeted, the same actors actually, committing to put in money, and the economy did pick up, and it picked up fairly smartly. But it's not one actor that's going to do it, or even 10 actors that are going to do it.
All right, I'm going to make my last pitch.
Okay.
I think that maybe it was you and I on Monday. We were talking about Elon Musk and Trump being individuals that come around every 200 years. I mean, I see Trump as being better than Reagan. And Reagan was considered by those of us on the right to be the best president in the century. So now you got a Trump coming along. Everybody says, oh, if we could only have another Reagan. Well, we got a Reagan on steroids.
Yeah.
On the other side, we got an Elon Musk, who some people think is a 1 in 1,000-year guy. But let's make it a 1 in 200-year guy also, with some combination of Edison and Rockefeller, Edison and Carnegie, et cetera, with all of these different inventive directions that he's going.
Right. Right. I agree with both of those.
Then you have a fairly decent guy in Jensen Huang in terms of a narrower peak.
You don't just have one or two people. We have dozens of really incredible entrepreneurs.
Right. So you put this together, I think we're talking about a once in a millennial kind of coming together, almost like a beginning of the United States coming together of brilliance, where it created a constitution that has withstood time and trouble. This might be another coming together of a set of minds that change everything. And again, Larry,
but look how many years each of those movements took. I mean, the American Revolution took place. The Constitution, took 10 years. And then the country struggled for the first, Washington, couple of decades. So, yeah, I mean, but, when we look back at history, we collapse the timescales.
Yeah.
When we live it, we end up finding that they're extended. So, look, I'd love to see it in my lifetime. Yeah. I'd love to see the result of all of this in lifetime. I'd love to see Elon, bestriding this narrow world like a colossus. But you know what happened to the last guy who bestrode the narrow world like a colossus?
Well, colossus is an interesting, use of terms. Since
that was the term that Mark Antony used when he described Julius Caesar.
Yes, I'm just saying, but also Memphis is Colossus, right? Yeah. So, all right. So, okay. Well, I thought it was also interesting, though, that those 4 categories, the robotaxi, the humanoid, energy, and AI, Elon, Tesla primarily, but combined with Elon will be maybe the #1 leader in all 4 categories. Probably will be the leader in all 4 categories.
Yeah, I think we underestimate what China's doing in the field of energy. And I think that the leader in terms of, small modular reactors, SMRs,
Right.
are going to be as important in these other categories. You're also dismissing what's happening in terms of what Elon's doing in the world of space.
Yes, yes.
It's going to have incredible importance. It's
So
not a Tesla company. Yeah,
communication would be,
communication, I mean, navigation, timing. I mean, I think that the SpaceX constellation is going to replace, the whole navigation, because that's like a 50-year-old technology
yeah,
now.
yeah,
It was invented 50 years ago. It was implemented like 30 years ago. It became, you know, indispensable 20 years ago.
right.
And here we are using this incredibly, you know, I mean, it hasn't worked well in the war in Ukraine. And so the question is, what is going to replace it? And I think space-based is the only way to go, but I think that low Earth orbit may be a lot better than, these gigantic navigation satellites that they have to launch.
Yeah, Brian Wang, I'm teasing the video that will be out tomorrow morning with Brian. He says that SpaceX taking over GPS is a slam dunk. It's like he feels like that's not even it's like, it's like no question that that it will take over GPS.
Right, and so that's why I wouldn't dismiss what's happening in space. I think that's very important. And what he's doing in terms of mass manufacturing satellites automagically, and how he's going to be sending them up in this Starship. It's going to launch, I hope, on the 22nd again. But those are of incredibly important moment.
So one of the things you always want to have when you're going towards these great moments is a great team, and Tesla team has added another board member. And so Jack Hartung, or Hertung, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but Jack, out of the Chipotle world. I've read the little bit of bio that was provided by Tesla, but that's other than that, and kind of watching Chipotle a little bit over the years. That's about all I know. Are you able to add anything to that, Larry?
Not a lot of color. I don't know him. I have read about him as you have. I'm very impressed with the fact that he lived through the Chipotle crises. There wasn't one, there were two consecutive crises. He helped that company get through it and emerge victorious, which is remarkable, truly
Right,
remarkable.
right.
So I'm very impressed by that. I'm very glad they're adding yet another independent board member, not because I think it's important for the company, but it's important for the company's critics, which is unfortunate to have to say that it's important, but it is in the light of what's been going on. And it adds some luster to the board, and hopefully he's a great contributor.
I had noticed, Larry, everybody, we defended Elon while he was off at Doge because we believed he was doing a very important thing that would be beneficial to Tesla. And that also he could do, seven things simultaneously, which we know is true. But have you noticed that there does seem to be a lot more activity since he's back? We're seeing Optimus videos. We're seeing videos of the FSD in going
I
around.
think it's the time. I think it's just the timing
You
of
see
it.
the timing? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's particularly important that he's back. I mean, I think the people at Tesla feel, pretty, independent. I think they all feel very confident in themselves. So I don't, I mean, it's a good thing that he's back. Very good thing that he's back full time. But I think that he's putting in his 6 or 8 hours a week into Doge.
Oh yeah, I'm sure of that. Maybe who knows, maybe more. Okay, so let's see. I think that's everything I had on my to-do list. Is there anything else for you, Larry? Or
Not really. I mean, so much Tesla news came across the wire
I
today. It was
know,
incredible.
I know. It's been like that all week.
Yeah.
I've had no trouble cutting I've been cut my hours back, Larry, from 12 hours a day to 5 hours a day to do my job. So, so I've been glad there's been so much news because it's easier to compile when you're doing it in less time. Um, so we have uh, as we mentioned, S&P 90, I'm sorry, 59.58, just 200 points to go, get to all-time high again. Does that matter?
Not to me. Well, look, the market, the market's weighing what's happened over the last ever since November. So clearly it's a good sign.
And would it be a somewhat of a statement that the exuberance, as you pointed out in the beginning of the show, that the exuberance that the market felt when Trump came in, which then got destroyed by some chaos, that exuberance is at least back to the roughly the level it was. Um,
Yeah, I haven't done the analysis in terms of checking the market against the same period in his first term, but I get the impression that it's very similar. I think we saw the market shoot up, then come down, and then go back up again.
I did.
So it's a pattern, you know? I mean, you have to say, wow, I mean, this guy has got magic at his fingertips. And people hate him. The level of hate is just incredible.
It's crazy. It's really, you watch these people and yeah, anyway, that's a whole nother show. Okay, we already talked about Tesla, but the after hours, it's down 1.28%, back to 345.50. Not sure why that might be, but maybe a little profit taking.
Yep.
Okay, then we talked about the bonds already. We know what that was hit, but let's go ahead and look again just to see if it was if there was any more action going on there. It is now down 1 basis point, so 4.445. So pretty much where it was over the last couple of days. So the news about the Moody downgrade doesn't seem to be making much of a difference there. Oil, 62.49. Not much change there, Larry, a little higher. Most people are saying that it's because all of this action, all this activity is making the oil folks feel that there's going to be more demand.
I think there has to be, if we're going to see a pickup in activity, even if the pickup in activity is on modern technologies. So.
Right. Natural gas down a little bit today, $33.32. So it's actually kind of falling down into the lower end of its range right now. Gold, Larry, last week you agreed that it was going to keep going down. You were right. It's now down to 3,205. Are we getting anywhere near a bottom?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think the dollar, you know, for all the negative about the dollar, I think we're going to see the dollar strengthen continuously through the rest of the year.
Okay. All right. And silver is following the pattern, also down 0.76. Copper down 1.96% to 459. Now that's right in the middle of its range
Yeah.
over the last year. We've been, it gets down to $4. It gets a little over $5, but I don't know any specific thing right now that might be impacting copper.
Tesla's buying all the transformers that are on Earth. I mean, have you seen those Tesla transformers just piling up? Anyway,
It's over 200, I think Joe said. Yeah. Yes, well, they're building something pretty big down there at Texas, but yeah, we'll see what happens. Bitcoin up 562. That's kind of a nothing burger. 136 though. Up, down.
well, I mean, there are many people who I respect tell me that Bitcoin's going up to $150, $150,000 before the end of the year.
Yeah. We haven't seen any Brad Gerstner lately. He hasn't he and Bill haven't done any podcasts in a while. So I haven't been able to get his latest.
I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't seen anything.
I usually listen to him. I don't care a lot about Bitcoin. I probably should, but I at
No,
least
they sold all their Tesla stock, Brad Gerstner.
he did. I know. I saw he bought some Uber, but he also sold all of his Tesla. So he took his profits. Wow, interesting. I'd be interested to hear that story in
Yep.
detail. Yeah. All right, Larry. We've covered everything that we promised these people that we'll cover.
Yep.
So
Well, have a good evening. Have a great weekend, and
we'll see you on Monday.
see you on Monday.
All right, Larry. Thanks so much as always. And to all of you out there, aloha and thanks for watching. I can't end with that, Larry, because I have to say it's been great talking to you. There you go.